All right, so the first thing that popped into my head when I heard about this project was an organization rather than a specific person. I really knew that I wanted to interview the director of this program called Streetlight, which is a support program centered around adolescents and young adults who are facing chronic or life-limiting illnesses and their patients right here at Shands Hospital. And this program utilizes student volunteers and matches them with these patients to create these really meaningful and deep friendships so that these patients don't have to go it alone through their illnesses and challenges, and that they'll have a friend there with them. And I really value everything that this program does, and I wanted to learn about the person that makes it happen. So the name of the person that I interviewed is Emily Sullivan. She's the director of Streetlight, and I don't know her personally. Well, I do now, but I didn't know her at the time. I found her email on the Streetlight website, and I decided to shoot her an email asking if she wouldn't mind answering a couple of questions for me from this class that I'm in. And she happily responded that she would love to. And so we set up an interview time, and I went to her office at Shands UF Children's Hospital, and she shared all of her amazing stories of her experience as the director. And I'm really thankful that this interview worked out, because I knew that I wanted to interview someone in the health field, and I especially wanted to interview someone that had close contact and personal relationships with these patients, because I want to be a PA when I am older. And I really want to focus on the interpersonal side of it and really connecting with my patients on a relational level rather than just the medical level. And so I wanted to learn, I guess, what is required to build this strong relationship, the people skills, the leadership skills, to make a successful team within a hospital. Right off the bat, I could tell that Emily was a really good person at heart just by her smile and her demeanor. Emily asked me at the beginning of our conversation if I had recently applied to be a volunteer for Streetlight because she recognized my name from an application. And I embarrassingly admitted that I did, but that I was not selected to be a part of the team just because of how competitive the nature of it is and the diversity required for this program. But she made me feel a lot more confident and better about myself when she noted how humble it was of me to still give this program attention even though I was not selected. And that also showed that her taking note and remembering my name out of all these applicants really shows how her attention and her level of care for this program. And then another thing I noticed when I was interviewing Emily was I'm not the best at talking with people. I get kind of awkward, and she was able to fill these little moments of silence and awkward gaps by asking me questions, and that just made me feel better. And she was even able to create, I guess, a safe space for me, which is important for leadership, and she was in a way leading me through this conversation just by how effortlessly she was able to communicate and make me feel comfortable. There were so many defining characteristics, skills, and traits that had come up during my interview with Emily. The list could go on and on. One major factor that makes her such a successful leader is the fact that she herself started out as a volunteer in her undergrad, right here at Shands UF Streetlight. By once being on the bottom of the totem pole and being an undergrad student volunteer, she had worked up to her position that she's now in and understands what it's like to be at every level of this organization, which helps her relate to and understand the viewpoints of all of her followers. And another significant action that Emily is taking as a leader of this organization is by conducting her own research project and using this research to pinpoint the weak areas of this program, seeing where the adolescent patients feel need the most improvement or whether they're not the happiest, and then Emily will go back in and try to fix these points, just to make it that much better of an experience for everyone. So this initiative that Emily is showing for her organization shows that she has a vision for the future and has a plan to get to that goal. One of the most important traits that Emily discussed was her fearlessness in taking a risk. When Emily was an undergrad, she had the mindset of going to law school. And her senior year, she realized that all the problems she was going to have to deal with, like divorce and crime, she just was not passionate for these issues. And she realized that she really enjoyed when she was volunteering for Streetlight. So then she kind of had to step back and reevaluate pretty much everything in her life to decide what she really wanted to do. So then Emily was offered a higher up position in Streetlight, and she decided to go for it, even though she was terrified with this being a nonprofit, with this being an emotional battle pretty much every day, and then having to help others through this emotional battle as well. She was definitely nervous to take this risk, but she said she's so happy she did and has not looked back ever since. Emily is also a very adaptive leader, which I noticed when she told me a story about when she was first a volunteer. She had this patient who was waiting for a transplant. She threw him a little Valentine's Day party, and he was not happy with it. He didn't want the pity. He didn't want notes from his nurses and volunteers like he wanted to be with his girlfriend. And she realized that not everything is going to work. Each individual person is different, so what one person likes, another might hate. So just having to know each one of her followers individually and adapt to their needs. Emily's authenticity and realness in her leadership, her ability to have interpersonal relationships with all of her volunteers and students, is something that I think she learned from her father. She told me a story about how her family doesn't come from big titles. For example, her dad was a hairdresser, and the way he showed his love for people was his ability to form individual relationships with all of his clients that would just keep coming back to him time after time. And at his funeral, there were almost 200 people there to show support for him. And I think Emily employs the same idea with all of her followers in Streetlight. So after the interview, I was blown away by the sincerity, generosity, and humility demonstrated by Emily Sullivan. I got out my phone at the end of the interview after I had left the room and did what Jen had mentioned as a good tip, and I just took a bunch of notes of everything I could remember from the interview, what was going through my mind, and I just could not stop writing all these nice things about her. But the main thing is why I think Emily Sullivan is so successful at being this director is she just loves people. The leadership theory that I feel Emily most represented was servant leadership, which is something that I resonate with because it's one of my favorite leadership theories that we've talked about in class. So there were about 5 practicalities that Emily had mentioned to me that made me consider the realistic aspects of leadership. One being resources and funding and the amount of work that it takes to provide money, good volunteers, advertising, all the things that make this program so successful doesn't come without a price. Another aspect Emily had mentioned to me is that she's not afraid to ask questions. She'll constantly ask the former director of Streetlight on advice of what she should do, and she is always open to new ideas. Another aspect that Emily had mentioned to me is her dream for initiating this program in other hospitals around the state and around the country. This shows that she's not just passionate about U.S. Streetlight program, but that she wants to see this flourish in so many other places, and that level of compassion and hard work and dedication really shines through. Another aspect of leadership that Emily made me realize is how emotionally draining it can be to be a leader. Just the fact that she's always there to be a counselor to all of her volunteers and patients means that who's there to counsel her when she's having a hard time. So Emily's had to figure out a way to maintain her own mental health while still keeping her volunteers and patients' mental health up as well. So how she keeps up her morale is she got a work phone, so she's able to have a personal phone for her home life and a work phone where she can focus on Streetlight related things and can keep them separated. Another aspect is that she takes trips to get away and clear her head. She goes on vacations with her girlfriends, with her family, and that helps her maintain her mental health and spirit and energy for keeping such a positive atmosphere within this program, because that's so important. Lastly, Emily used a metaphor that I really liked, and she said that you can't look at life with this perspective of looking at dominoes and just seeing the rectangle right in front of you, because dominoes are lined up with this crazy pathway, and if you're looking at it from the dimension of just seeing that one domino, you'll get burnout. You won't have the motivation to keep going. But if you see the bigger picture and look at the dominoes from a bird's eye view, you can see what's mapped out for you, and you might not understand why or where you're going at the start, but just know that there's bigger plans for you ahead, and you can't let the small challenges get you down. You just have to keep knocking over your dominoes and seeing where life takes you and being excited about the outcomes. Overall, I would say the most important reason why I think Emily is such this incredible leader is that she knows her why. She knows what she's doing and why she's doing it, and that keeps her motivated to keep wanting to do more and keep wanting to be the best and wanting to keep pushing her followers and patients to be the best that they can be, is because she understands the importance and relevance of what she's doing. And when you know why you're doing it, it makes you so much more convincing to everyone else, and it helps them understand why they want to do it. And so Emily being a leader by example is something that I really value, because that's how I tend to lead, is through example. So seeing her do it and be successful really inspires me that there's so many opportunities in my future if I just use at least some of the characteristics that Emily has as a leader. I just want to say I really appreciated doing this project. It kind of forced me to step outside of my comfort zone, and honestly, it was weird being the interviewer rather than the interviewee, because I'm so used to being the one getting asked the questions. And so I thought it was a really great learning experience, and I loved everything that I got to witness in this conversation with this incredible leader. So I definitely encourage you to keep doing this project for other classes.